What's up, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking about 2 Samuel chapter 4. People don't realize that in the Bible, the word murder doesn't always just say about actual physical death, but it also talks about spiritual and someone's soul death. That it comes in many different forms, not just physical, but causing someone to feel so low and to destroy their spirit, their soul, and even their body. We're gonna dive into a king who was paralyzed and helpless. The lesson specifically talks about how two men executed a king that was so helpless. We realize and we see the lessons of helplessness, taking advantage of someone, causing the death, spiritual, soul, and body, and destroying them. We must be careful about the things that we are engaged in and the people who are defenseless and helpless. We'll dive into this and let's get right into this video. Open up your Bibles to 2 Samuel chapter 4. Let's get right into this video. When God gives you that peace, you will rest in His security, His protection, His comfort, His love. Verse 1. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard about Abner's death at Hebron, he lost all courage, and all Israel became paralyzed with fear. Now there were two brothers, Baanah and Rechab, who were captains of Ishbosheth's raiding parties. They were sons of Rimmon, a member of the tribe of Benjamin, who lived in Beeroth. The town of Beeroth is now part of the Benjamin territory because the original people of Beeroth fled to Gittim, where they still lived as foreigners. Saul's son Jonathan had a son named Mishbosheth, who was crippled as a child. He was 5 years old when the report came from Jezreel that Saul and Jonathan had been killed in battle. When the child's nurse heard the news, she picked him up and fled. But as she hurried away, she dropped him, and he became crippled. Verse 5. One day, Rechab and Baanah, the son of Rimmon from Beeroth, went to Ishbosheth's house around noon as he was taking his midday rest. The doorkeeper, who had been sifting wheat, became drowsy and fell asleep. So Rechab and Baanah slipped past her. They went into the house and found Ishbosheth sleeping on his bed. They struck and killed him and cut off his head, then taking his head with them, they fled across the Jordan Valley through the night. When they arrived at Hebron, they presented Ishbosheth's head to David. "Look," they exclaimed to the king, "here is the head of Ishbosheth, the son of your enemy Saul, who tried to kill you. Today the Lord has given my lord, the king, revenge on Saul and his entire family." If we remember back in the first Samuel, the prophecy came true, but we'll continue on reading. "The Lord, who saved me from all my enemies, is my witness. Someone once told me, 'Saul is dead,' thinking he was bringing me good news, but I seized him and killed him at Ziklag. That's the reward I gave him for his news. How much more should I reward the evil man who killed an innocent man in his own house on his own bed? Shouldn't I hold you responsible for his blood and rid the earth of you?" So David ordered his young men to kill them, and they did. They cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies beside the pool of Hebron. Then they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron. That is God's holy word. Now let's break this down. So what we'll see here is in verses 1 to 4, the end of Ishbosheth's power to retain the throne of Israel. We see a picture of helplessness in Ishbosheth. How? Due to Abner's death, we see that. Due to cowardice people, the two brothers. Due to the people's fear, though. We also see, due to the threatening power of two lesser military leaders, Baanah and Rechab. We see that they were brothers, partners in murder. They were Benjamites, descendants of the family that had been resettled in Beeroth by Joshua. We see this in Joshua chapter 9, verse 16 to 21, and it reads, 3 days after making the treaty, They learned that these people actually lived nearby. The Israelites set out at once to investigate and reached their town in 3 days. The names of these towns were Gibeon, Kephara, Beeroth, Kerithia, Jearim. But the Israelites did not attack the town, for the Israelite leaders had made a vow to them in the name of the Lord, the God of Israel. The people of Israel grumbled against their leader because of the treaty. But the leaders replied, "Since we have sworn an oath in the presence of the Lord, the God of Israel, we cannot touch them. This is what we must do. We must let them live, for divine anger would come upon us if we broke our oath. Let them live." So they made them woodcutters and water carriers for the entire community, as the Israelite leaders directed. We see that. But we also see they were originally settlers of Beeroth who had fled to Gideon and remained there. Due to the physical disability of Jonathan's son, as a child he was crippled. But we now see the gruesome murder of King Ishbaith by Rechan and Banam, the terrible evil of murder. We see this in verses 5 to 8, right? They set out for the palace, plotting to kill the king. They arrived at noon while he was in bed, pretending to need some wheat, and sneak into the king's bedroom. They stabbed him in the stomach. They sneaked away and escaped. They killed him while he was lazy, slothfully lying in bed at noon, and then they cut off his head. They left and traveled straight to David, journeyed all night. They presented the head to David, and this is what they claimed. They claimed that they had killed David's enemy, hoped to be well rewarded, hypocritically gave credit to the Lord. But we also now see God's judgment never escapes anyone. We see that in verses 9 to 12. The justice and judgment of David in executing the two murderers. A lesson that evil men will not escape God's judgment. David condemned them. The Lord avenged the deliverers, not men. The law of precedent condemned them years before. David had executed the man who claimed to have killed Saul and hoped to be rewarded in 1 Samuel chapter 1 verses 13 to 16. The law of God condemned them. They had killed an innocent man. We also see this in Genesis chapter 9 verse 6, and it reads, "If anyone takes a human life, that person's life will also be taken by human hands. For God made human beings in his own image." We see in Exodus chapter 21 verses 12, it says, "Anyone who assaults or kills another person must be put to death." In Leviticus chapter 24 verse 17, anyone who takes another person's life must be put to death. In Numbers chapter 35:31 also says, "Also you must never accept a ransom payment for the life of someone judged guilty of murder and subject to execution. Murderers must always be put to death." We see also David ordered the murderers to be executed. The guards publicly exposed the bodies as a warning to others. The head of the king Ishbaith was buried in Hebron that we see. We must be very careful that your evil acts that causes the downfall of someone else will bring judgment upon you. A curse will be, you cannot be cursed, but a curse of judgment will come. We must be very careful not to be involved in such of these matters. We must be very careful, and we must not ask for a reward. We must not go into an evil place, doing evil things for the benefit of yourself. Always look and analyze your actions before you do something, because you might turn up to be on the wrong side of God's judgment. I hope you enjoyed this. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, you're here, and hit that notification bell because we're going into chapter 5. And press the thumbs up button and leave a comment. Thank you for watching. God bless you and God bless your family, and I'll see you soon.